Welcome to another practice where we're continuing our journey working through the kleshas, the subtle veils that obscure our true nature and entangle us in our own suffering. Now, to be human is to feel very deeply. We are wired for longing and resistance. We reach for pleasure. We recoil from pain as often as we inhale and exhale. We grasp and push away. This rhythmical reflex of craving and aversion becomes the very loop that keeps us bound to the root of suffering. Now, last week we focused on raga, our attachment and addiction for things that give us pleasure. This week, it's the other side of the coin, we are focusing on Dveṣa, this aversion to pain, discomfort, or anything that is unpleasant. It is our instinctual reaction to turn away, to armor up, to distance ourselves, to numb and avoid what we do not want to feel. And it's natural. And yet, it is also what clouds the lens of our perception. We perceive through our body, energy, and mind. And this veils that luminous presence within us. And we live in this amnesia. We have that disease of forgetfulness, that we forget the tools of practice, the teachings. We forget our intention, our purpose, our path. And we forget ultimately not just who we are, but what we are. And in this forgetting, we get caught up in this tug of war between what we cling to and what we resist, forgetting that we are not either of these things. And as Joseph Goldstein reminds us, suffering is simply the inevitability of an unwanted experience. Dveṣa is that inner flinch and our refusal to be with that experience. But yoga invites us to pause, to stay, to witness with more of a loving awareness to what we're averse to and welcome it in with more compassion rather than collapsing in what we perceive may cause us further pain and suffering. So this is at the heart of our practice today, not to push away or bypass, but to meet it with more loving awareness, to soften our grip, to remember not just who we are, but what we are is far greater than any moment of discomfort. Now, I'll use myself as an example. I have a very real life experience because the sequence that I have designed for us is a sequence of backbending. Now, when I was about 19, 20 years old, I had a teacher sit on me and my back went off like a gunshot and I had bulged a disc. And I wasn't able to walk for about 6 to 9 months. I had to do a lot of rehabilitation. So I have a very strong aversion to anybody adjusting me. And then 2, I do have an aversion to backbends. And it's still in me. It's still hardwired. Every time I enter a backbend, I have a very visceral physical reaction. My energy, my breath, I hold it. And there's a thought that old memory comes up and goes, this might hurt you. And so this way of welcoming that very physical, visceral reaction is what we want to work with. So what I want you to try to practice it is what happens when we become trapped in the recoil. What happens when we resist very fiercely? And that resistance itself becomes the source of our continual suffering. Dveṣa is that deep-seated aversion to pain, discomfort, dis-ease. Not the kind of wise discernment that keeps us safe from harm. It's a very, very thin and delicate difference. So wise discernment will keep us safe from injury, especially in practice. However, Dveṣa is that unconscious and compulsive turning away from what once wounded us or what might wound us again. And so it's a delicate way in which we need to listen to that buddhi, that inner teacher, that inner guide, that inner guru, and then sharpen our viveka, that discerning awareness, that wise judgment, to actually keep us in a place where we won't cause ourselves further harm, but a way in which we can hold whatever comes up in our practice with more loving awareness. And we all carry memories in our body, energy, and mind. And sometimes they're more subtle, like a recoil from something that's smelly. It's like, ooh, who has stinky feet in class? Or, you know, you look at a food and it churns your stomach, and like even the thought of it, just like, ugh. Or you hear a sound that really grates on your nerves. Or you visit a place or a face that all of a sudden reminds you of the ache within your heart. And other times it becomes very fierce. Like when we practice, all of a sudden a trauma that is unspoken arises, or a relationship that is unresolved, or even a moment of shame, grief, or loss that has branded itself on your nervous system. Our bodies remember, and when we move and breathe, this all of a sudden allows stuff to come up. But you notice when you are averse, when Dveṣa is present, our hearts contract, our breath shortens, our gaze hardens, and we react in a very predictable way. Now, there's a saying in 12-step recovery that says, if it's a hysterical reaction, it's usually historical. So Dveṣa lives in the shadow of our past experience, yet it colors our present reality. And this contraction of avoidance often masquerades as protection, but more often it's just a prison. And it convinces us that freedom is in the fleeing, but true freedom is in the staying, in the witnessing. It's in the choosing not to run, even when every cell of your being trembles with the memory of pain. In our practice today, I invite you to explore this terrain with more kindness, curiosity, that we soften the edges around discomfort and we become willing to look into the mirror of our reaction, to lean in to presence rather than pushing away in fear, that we return again and again to the breath. Our breath becomes our faithful guide in learning how to self-regulate the strong thoughts, emotions, sensations that arise in practice. And as we rest in the I amness, that consciousness that is vast enough to include even this ache, even the story that we tell ourselves about the ache, even that deep urge to avoid, to numb, to shut down. But we pause. And in this pause, in this stillness, we notice what arises when you meet a posture you dislike. What arises when there is a moment of intensity or challenge. What do? You know? That thought that is very unsettling, that reaction that stirs as you are in that pose that you don't like. Noticing the tightening, where do you do that? Noticing the judging or the mind fleeing to the mind's commentary, the storytelling, the harsh critic, either projecting out to me or someone else or to yourself. Now, with this kind of sense of cultivating this awareness, that you can, in that exact moment, take refuge in drishti, that gazing, the gazing and dropping into that loving awareness, that you choose not to flinch and recoil. This is in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali in Sutra 233 states, Pratipaksha Bhavana, we cultivate the opposite. We meet our resistance not with more force, but with tenderness. We learn from our reactions rather than be ruled by them. And Dveṣa invites us to heal not by erasing the past, but choosing to respond to it differently in the present. So this becomes an invitation to grow in courage, in compassion, and to choose wisely. This is how we shape our karma. We take wise action. We make wise choices. And in this practice, we delay the habitual reaction. We sit with the ache instead of trying to scratch the itch. That we drop into that sense of asking, how is this going to teach me? I'm not trying to get rid of this, but what can this offer me? Gaining greater insight, understanding, so I can learn, I can grow, and I can evolve so I can thrive in my life rather than be imprisoned by it. So in doing so, we are trying to untangle ourselves from the web of the kleshas. We loosen our grip of ashmita, the egotism that clings to the wound or to whatever we're resisting. And then we dissolve the distortion of ashmita, the misperception that we are still unsafe, and that we temper the flames of raga, the craving for only comfort. I just want to do forward bends, I don't want to do back bends. And instead we stand in the field of viveka, that wise discernment, that wise judgment, and that we practice abhyasa, that steadfast devotion of seeking the truth, of showing up and remembering the tools of practice and utilizing the tools as we breathe in and breathe out, cultivating that vairagya, the soft art of surrendering, of letting go, of detaching with love from whatever we perceive. And this practice becomes a sanctuary for what we have long resisted. And let this moment of reconciliation between your past and your present self be felt, seen, and have space to be bathed in that light. And let this be the kind of threshold towards lasting fulfillment, deeper contentment, and serenity. And as we practice the tools to help free ourselves from the causes of our suffering. So as we receive a deep breath in, that we feel that fullness, being very honest, brave, raw, and intimate to whatever arises in our practice, as we're going to be doing back bends. And let it carry you into the depths of your being. Let it welcome all parts of you. Let it open to change, and a welcoming, all, rejecting none, even the ones that you run away from constantly. Let's try to welcome them so we have a different way in which we can relate to them and choose wisely next time. So we practice on our mat so we can actually practice in our real life and become more skillful in the way in which we shape our lives, we shape our karma. So I welcome you to our practice today.